It's the over-under report, fantasy basketball adds and drops after week 3 coming up next on Beat the Odds. Don't go anywhere. Hello, sport fans. Welcome back to another episode of Beat the Odds. We're going to look at the players that you should be dropping from your teams and those you might be wanting to pick up after 3 weeks of basketball. This is the over-under report. Let's get started here with the players that we want to consider dropping from the teams. Coming up first, here's Alex Caruso, guard for the Chicago Bulls. Last week, 5 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, 1 block on average, 29% from the floor, 67% from the line, 26 minutes per game. Not a bad showing here in the counting stats and rebounds and assists. We saw an improvement on that end here. He did get a double-double rebounds and assists in the last game against Toronto. But combined poor shooting with really bad timeshare at guard. If you take a look at that roster, I mean, you've got Levine, you got DeRozan, you got Dosunmu, you got Kobe White, you got Lonzo Ball, Goran Dragic. When everybody's healthy, where do you slot Alex Caruso? Is he the 5th best guard on that team? Who knows? But it doesn't really bode well for his end-of-season outlook, and he's not getting enough playing time and certainly doing poorly enough in shooting for me to warrant a spot for a guy like him at this time. So 51% owned. I could see that ownership dropping below the 50% by the end of the week. Lou Dort is up next here. Pains me to put him on this list, but because I did hype him in the preseason. But when you're coming out here last week at 12 points per game, 2 rebounds, 3 assists on 39% from the field, 57% from the line, doesn't really bode well for trying to stick on a fantasy basketball team. There should be a lot of better options for you there. Anywhere, in pretty much any league, you should be able to find somebody better than that. Now, 29 minutes per game may sound a little low. That's actually up near the top for the team. The one thing about OKC, especially lately, is there are 11 players playing on that squad that are averaging more than 10 minutes per game, which means that there's a lot of time being shared. So that doesn't bode well for the ceiling for somebody like Lou Dort. I don't think we're going to be seeing many breakthrough games from him. If you're not SGA on that team, and especially in the early season, I wouldn't expect much there for the rest of the season outlook. So might not be a bad idea to consider parting ways with Lou Dort. Brandon Clark is up next. We kind of been not on his train, although he is starting to impress here a little bit, so he may be coming off this list here pretty soon, but still at 59% ownership, I'm not really buying him as of yet. 11 points, 4 rebounds, 1.5 blocks. That was his stats from last week here on average. 17 minutes per game, still way too low to roster in my opinion here. 64% from the line, 78% from the field. He needs to get more minutes. If he gets more minutes, then he changes that quickly from a drop candidate to an add candidate for sure. But as it stands right now here, 17 minutes is just not going to cut it. It's way too volatile for me to spend a roster spot on somebody that's not getting that many minutes. And of course, we have Sandy Aldama that's cutting into his minutes, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is right around the corner. We might be seeing him in about a month. So at that point here, what happens to Brandon Clark? I'm not looking to take that risk here on him, based on the fact that he may be getting even less minutes by the time that arrives. So drop candidate still for me. We have Troy Murphy up next. Now he's actually at 49% owned at the recording of this episode here, so he's a little under that cutoff, but I wanted to include him here anyways. 8 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists on 37% shooting, 100% from the line. 28 minutes per game. Now, the obvious reason why he's on this drop list, and he will be dropping even further from this amount, from this mark, is that the New Orleans Pelicans are almost as whole as you're going to see them for the entire year, which means Troy Murphy is going to be delegated to the bench, and there just isn't that much bench minutes to go around here with the amount of minutes they're giving their starters. So I don't really see a very good ceiling here for Troy Murphy either, kind of similar to Brandon Clark in that sense. And he just doesn't do enough for me in categories to warrant a roster spot at this point. Safely drop him until further notice. We'll see if somebody else gets injured. If Zion gets injured, then I pick him back up again, for sure. We got Kevin Love up next here. He's a tricky one for me to put in this list. I really couldn't choose a center that I feel comfortable dropping. About 50%. He's probably the one and only option I would have. Had a really solid week here. Posted 13 points per game, 8 rebounds, 4 assists on 43% shooting, 79% from the line. My issue, again, here is just the amount of minutes he's getting. It's 19 minutes per game. Love is giving you great point per minute production, but unfortunately in this league, you're looking for points per game, not points per minutes. And if you're not getting more than 20 minutes per game, I just have a really hard time stomaching a roster spot for someone like that. So for that reason, and really that reason alone, I would consider dropping Kevin Love. Just way too volatile for the amount of minutes that he's getting here at the time being. If that changes, if he gets up to the 25 minute per game mark, then that changes my outlook here for them as well. But at 19 minutes, no thanks. Not for me. All right, let's give you 5 players you should be taking a look at here. Starting in Miami, we have Max Strus. He is picking up some serious minutes in Miami. Now, Jimmy Butler was down with injury here, so Strus was getting some of his minutes. But he was still playing some big minutes off the bench before this happened. So over the course of the week, you're looking at 17 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 3-pointer made, 49% from the field, 100% from the line in 35 minutes per game. That's what I'm talking about. With that much time on the floor, you're bound to see that he's going to get the stats necessary to warrant a spot on your team. He's a 3-point shooter, chipping in with rebounds and assists, and still, as mentioned there before, getting big minutes off the bench, which is where I believe he will be now that Jimmy Butler is back on the squad. Cam Thomas is up next here. For the week, he got 19 points per game, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 46% from the field, 93% from the line. 31 minutes per game is what he racked up there as well. Somebody who I would imagine you should be hanging on to here for the short term, at the very least, until we figure out what's going on with Kyrie. Cam Thomas is the likely replacement here for minutes going forward, and will get his lion's share of opportunities in that lineup. He's currently posting solid mid-round value stats for the time that he's been playing here over the last week or so. So I would feel comfortable just picking him up and seeing how things kind of go. Low risk. He's currently owned in 37% of Yahoo leagues, so should be easy to get him and could prove to be beneficial here, at least in the short term. Up next for the New Orleans Pelicans, we have Larry Nance chipping in at 13 points per game, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, 75% from the field and 75% from the line, 29 minutes per game. The minutes per game is what intrigues me here for Nance. He's kind of in a timeshare right now with Jonas Valanciunas in New Orleans, and that may prove beneficial here for opportunities for Nance. He also backs up Zion Williamson, so if Zion happens to go down, then Larry Nance will be able to pick up some extra minutes that way, hopefully lead to some extra stats. So not a bad guy to have stashed for that reason there as well. His ceiling is a little bit higher than some of the other players on this list. Coming up next, we have Patrick Williams for the Bulls. 12 points per game last week, 6 rebounds, 1.5 blocks, 46% from the field, 100% from the line in 30 minutes per game. That's what you want to see. He was the number 4 pick from Chicago just a couple years ago, and I think he's starting to show why that is. A really good 3-and-D glue guy, very big and strong. Kind of reminds me of an OG Anunoby out there when I was watching him play against the Raptors there yesterday. He could really prove well for teams getting in on him now over the course of the season. Could be a good source of counting stats and steals and blocks for you at a forward position. And he's not going to be really affected like an Alex Caruso with a timeshare, because there isn't just that much depth in Chicago when it comes to forward. So go ahead and pick him up with confidence. I think he will do well here for your team. And last but not least, this is more a stash play for those in point leagues. Isaiah Jackson, I've seen he's dropped below 50%. Now he's at 48% owned. His last week isn't really so much to write off here. It's 7 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 55% shooting, 67 from the line, and 21 minutes per game. Miles Turner is back on the floor, which means Jackson will be relegated to the bench, which means he's got to split time with guys like Jalen Smith and, of course, Miles Turner. So you're not going to get a whole lot of immediate production out of him. You may get a good game or two here, especially if one of the two guys mentioned above him are out. But he's definitely somebody you want to be stashing, because I don't think Miles Turner is going to be an Indiana Pacer by the end of the year, and that's going to just open up the door for Isaiah Jackson to get some big minutes and hopefully some big stats to go along with it here. He has an elite block rate, which is what intrigues me. Blocks are a little harder to get by this year, so if you can get them as a center position for somebody who can do a bunch of other things here, that's just going to bode well there for you, for the versatility of your team going forward. And that's going to do it here for the over-under report. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. We are going to sign off for now, but we're going to be back here next week with the Week 4 basketball over-under report. Stay tuned for that.